Imam. When I first met him, when I first encountered him, I thought that he was a fraud because what he talked about, I could not substantiate by way of Sunnah. And what I could not substantiate, I could not accept. So that was a parting for me very early on as I watched my companions move in different directions. It became a very sobering situation because it got kind of volatile. But Allah subhanahu sustained the Muslims, and I'm in awe of some of the things that you all have said and experienced. And the thing that Sister Halima just mentioned puts the icing on the cake. 40 years, time to get over it. What they did, they did. What they do, they do. This should be a gathering of saying, where are we going from here? We don't need to keep rehashing and rehearsing what they did. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has manifested the error of their ways. What we need to do is pick up the pieces, put it together, and move forward. Learn from our mistakes, learn from our experiences, and just keep moving forward. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in your midst some very capable young brothers and sisters, and that is the most important thing. I can sit here and go on and on and on and on, but I don't think it's necessary. Like I said, Brother Musa and I were youngsters together in this thing. I watched Sister Halima and her sisters and brothers, as well as my children, grow up, because they all grew up together in the Justice thing. And I'm pleased to see the outcome of what they have become. Now it's on you guys, you young people, to sit down and say, okay, we have to build. You don't need to sit down and, they did this, they did that, we did that. Okay, that's fine and good. What we need to learn, what we need to realize and figure is getting ourselves equipped with the best akida that we can deal with. That's what saved me, about mercy, and my companion and other brothers. It was based on akida. It wasn't based on how I felt. I felt a certain kind of way. But my feeling was based on the akida that I knew that was solid. And it was upon that no matter what my allegiance was to those brothers that invited us, or that brother that invited us to Tsunami, my akida prevented me from saying, okay, I'm with it. Didn't happen. I met him one time in Jersey City, New Jersey. And that time I said to Hussein, I ain't down. I'm not down. This is not what I know from the Quran and Sunnah. I'm out. And of course I had to deal with the barrage of, my kunya was red beard. Some of you might have heard that, red beard, yeah, that's me. And people used to go at it. Red beard was from, this and the third. Brother Musa would testify to the fact that among the brothers that were surrounding with Hussein, they used to tease me and call me Hussein's pet because I was studious, and Hussein understood that. And that's one thing I respected about him, that he appreciated somebody that could think. It wasn't just being a thug. It was somebody who fought. It was somebody who could convey an idea. It was somebody who could research an item. And he appreciated that. Until I said, I'm not down, not happening, not going that way. And I parted ways. And there was no fear about it. We just kept learning and producing. producing, learning, and producing. And alhamdulillah, I am elated and honored to be in your presence today. Don't take that light. That's a big item for me. I'm honored to see it. I'm honored to know it. I'm sad that some of you had the experience which you experienced, but take your experiences as a learning tool. Let it be that it contributed to your manhood or your womanhood. Don't sit down and beat yourself up. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought you to this point, and like Sister Halima said, and I couldn't have said it any better. After 40 years, people had to wait for them and say, okay, what are we going to do now? Musa was gone. We wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. What are we going to do? And our going forth now is going to be for what we do for these real little guys. What are we going to do? One of the things that stayed with me from 1972, 73, one of our shaheeds, Bilal al-Rahman, he was sitting down and was talking, and a large cross-section of us that was a part of the guard back then, we were all in our 19s or 20s. We were youngsters. We weren't half as mature as some of you brothers and sisters are. We were 19, 20 years old. You know, we knew what we didn't want from Jahiliyyah. And one of the things that his brother said to me that resonates, and I hear it in my head at this point even today. And he sat down and said, you know why we do this? You know, and I consider myself half smart, so I had some stupid idea that I knew what he was saying. And he said, no, we're doing this for you young guys. And that was the first time I had to find like, oh, this is about me and what I'm supposed to do as an aftermath. And this is where you at now. You got these young brothers who are saying to you, and they're saying it very eloquently, by way of deen, by way of Quran and Sunnah. So what he was saying to me, they were doing for young guys, I'm now saying to you, what we did was for you young guys. And as Sister Halima pointed out, yes, we had businesses, we had stores, we weren't just thugs. You know, one of the things that Dar Islam prided itself on, back then, we, in addition to businesses and other activities, we had what was called DIMSA. Nobody don't know what that acronym is. DIMSA stood for Dar Islam Muslim Student Association. It wasn't about just being knuckle draggers, walking down the street like Neanderthals, as some people have been told. This is what Dar Islam was. Oh, they're just a bunch of thugs. As I used one term in one of the interviews on at R2F, I said, yes, the Dar was bellicose. And one of them said, I don't know what that means. Bellicose means to be aggressive, to be agitated. And that bellicose spirit was against not people, but kufr, nifaq, and bid'ah. It was about against all of that. So Dar Islam was very, very bellicose, very warlike, very antagonistic to kufr, against hypocrisy, against infidelity. All of these things. Don't let anybody rob you of the honor of your legacy of your birthright from Dar Islam. Never. if it weren't for what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed Dar es-Salaam to do, we have to ask ourselves, where would we be right now? Where would we be? When I was young, you couldn't just go to a masjid until I met Dar es-Salaam. And you could push that button any time of the day or night. And somebody said, Assalamu alaikum. Alaikum salam. And that buzz you in so you could make salah. You can't do that today. With all of the magnitude of Muslims all over the place, and all of the money, and all of the books, and all of the highfalutin brains that they got behind them, you go to the masjid after after Isha, it's a business. It's a business. You gotta wait till maybe 5 minutes they might open the door. If not, you gotta wait until 7, 8 o'clock in the morning at business hours. You don't hear among the masajid of the adhan 5 times a day, not just in the building, but out on the street corner. People heard that. And that was a call. It was a courageous calling. It was a bold calling. Even to the point that the local police used to tell the kuffar, you don't go down that street and do nothing that you're not supposed to do. Because we were very serious about protecting the sanctity of who we were, where we were at, and what we were doing. So don't let anybody sit down and say, you don't have the capacity to do this, that, and the third. That was a strategic thought executed on a military basis. We teach you that warfare. First thing you try to do is conquer the intelligence mechanism, you conquer the women, you conquer the children, and whatever was is no more. The Dar es-Salaam movement was the victim of COINTELPRO. We were the victims of that. They strategically sat down and said, them guys over there on 52 Herman Place, we gotta control them, we gotta contain them. They were saying it then, they're saying it now. So you come from a rich legacy, an honored legacy. And I'm proud to say that I was a part of that. And that I knew nothing outside of that. When people started going different directions, the only thing we could do is just make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would return them to where they were. And if they did, they didn't. But, and I don't want to keep going on and on and on, because I know you have questions that we can probably answer more directly to. But don't let anybody, and I can't emphasize this enough, you don't hear nothing else I say. Don't let anybody tell you that you came from a worthless situation. That was not the case. The movement of Dar es-Salaam was a replication of various movements, like the Wahhabis, like the Sanusi. The Sanusi movement of Sheikh Shibu Uthman ibn Fudi in Africa. Very much the same thing. It was bellicose, but bellicose against hypocrisy, unbelief, disloyalty, and so forth and so on. And these were the things that the movement was all about. Did we have faults? Absolutely. We had some serious shortcomings. But the greater part of what we did was more outstanding than the lesser part. And like I said, I wanted to make sure that I mentioned particularly about DIMSA, because some people thought that us coming from Darkness Land. We were just a bunch of knuckleheads. We were Neanderthal, dragging our knuckles on the ground, walking down the street. You know, that was something, and as I've always said, one of the things that these people do is they put people in your midst, not to lead your struggle, but to contain your struggle. And that's what Jelani did. He contained it, he ripped it apart, he tried to humiliate the leadership of the movement. And there were some of us who sat down. It's okay, we know what the hadith is. The hadith from Rasulullah Islam is that when you unite under one man, somebody else comes, and the result is clear. The bad thing that was, some of the people that we were sitting with turned right around and said, hey, this is what they're talking about. And then those stories go to another place, and I'm going to end on this one thing. You know, I was so into holding on to movement when we ended up moving to Van Sicklen, and Jelani got really underway inside his infiltration of the movement. I ended up making Salat in the wintertime on Van Sicklen Avenue in the street. I refused to be searched. I refused. Everybody like red man, you gotta give up the stuff. Really? Watch this. And I went back to my car, got a prayer, rolled it out on the ground, and prayed right out on the ground. My own attitude was, no, we're not gonna play that game. And if we go down, I ain't gonna be the last one. And they left me alone after that. My lost my God's mercy. But you have to stand your ground based on your conviction of your aqidah. I can't emphasize this enough. It's got to be about your aqidah. You've got to have solid aqidah. Without it, you will be subject and vulnerable to any room and wish of any magician that come down the street. One of the things Imam Yafi used to always say in some of his khutbahs, he said, man, if you see somebody flying down the street in midair, if he's not calling to Quran and Sunnah, do not follow. And this is reality. Do not follow. Know your situation. You know, one mission, if I can issue out a mission statement to people, every brother and sister in here should commission themselves to learn 40 hadiths with full Islam. And I don't mean everybody go get the book of 40 hadiths and learn those 40 hadiths. But everybody learn 40 different hadiths with full Islam. That protects your community. Because when the charlatan come and say, I have knowledge of the unseen, you know, we got 10 people with 40 hadith, we got 400 hadith. So the art of deception becomes difficult to perpetrate because now you're grooming people to think. You're grooming people to think. And this is what we have to be about, inshallah. Again, it's my pleasure, it's my honor. I'm so elated to be here. I love these young guys. I'm just in flow about them. I can walk up on them and hug them for 15 minutes and then turn them loose and hug them again. They get hugged until it's time to leave. Because I'm telling you, I love these young people, man. I love young people. I love young people. Because I was a young people. I was young people, man. And it was young people that kept everything alive. Rasulullah loved young people. A lot of people sit down and try to give the idea that Rasulullah surrounded himself by a bunch of old, bearded, gray guys. When we read hadith, whether it's say, if it's so-and-so, if it's such and such, if it's so-and-so, if it's such and such. Young guys. Young sisters. dive yourself into the Quran and Sunnah and don't look back, inshallah. To understand that, and I think I have to preface it by mentioning some of the things that were going on inside the movement that a lot of people didn't know about. In the early beginning of the as many people know, it had its leanings by way of the South because of one of the teachers of Imam Yahya was a brother by the name of Fitrah and some others. And so there were leanings towards the South. But the Imam wasn't sold on it in totality. He understood where he was, what he was about, what he was trying to accomplish, and that allowed a bringing together of the concept from Al-Ikhwan Muslimun out of Egypt, which kind of established the social political ideology of what Dar es-Salaam could or should be. In 1973, Imam Yahya made Hajj with a couple of the companions from the administration. And at that point, he was given the full volume of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah's Fitrah, as many of you know, the Fitrah also called the Fitrah of Ibn Taymiyyah. And it was at this point that Imam Yahya had begun to design his public teachings, meaning by way of khutbahs. And he would say things in the beginning, he would say, coming from the Fitrah of Ibn Taymiyyah, Kitab al-Jihad, Kitab al-Jihad, and so forth and so on. This became correlated with the incident that took place in 1974, when we were assaulted and people came to the masjid and assassinated two of our administrators, meaning Bilal Abdul Rahman and Muhammad Ahmed Abdul Akbar. At that point, Imam Yahya began to look at, listen, you know, we have to navigate intelligently through what we're doing. And so his teaching became more focused on Aqeedah. And so his khutbahs really began to focus on Kitab al-Imam from the Fitrah of Imam Ibn Taymiyyah and Kitab al-Jihad. And he began to seriously advocate that. I believe that caused an internal irritation among certain people inside the dark who had ulterior motives. We had people that was a part of the dark that didn't, and I'm talking about now nationally, who couldn't accept the fact that the Imam was the Imam of the movement. There was rumblings of, so is the Imam of everything, was he just thinking, and all these different kinds of things. So you had all sorts of raw feelings out of ignorance, because Negroes didn't know how to think. That's the bottom line. Negroes didn't know how to think. And so the egos got in the way. He ain't the Imam. He's just the Imam of what is. And they didn't see the nation that he was building inside of this nation. And I believe now, like I believe then, that some of those rumblings were people who were on FBI blinded all the time. So that was coming around. In addition to that, some of the administration, and I voiced this to some of my companions, I said, listen, when I sat down and looked at the administration at Yasin Masjid, I realized that that administration, for the most part, came from a particular area in New York City, from Rockaway. When I looked at the guys in Rockaway, all of them were Catholics when they were before Islam. So I just started to say, okay, so this mysticism is not happenstance. I knew this from before, and it's similar to thinking. I knew this mysticism and all that crap, and interceding and all these different things. So it was kind of intriguing to some people. Now, Bilal and Muhammad Ahmed were not from Rockaway. And so they had a different position that became very, very manifest. And so as things turned on, internally people began to question Imam Yahya. I remember having a conversation with a brother who's now passed, and he said, we needed, since y'all want to call him, because we used to kid him, he said that he was the Caliph of Dar es-Salaam. And some people really got agitated with that. And so some people said, there was a brother who said, well, if he's all of that, then we need an Imam here since he's the Caliph of everything in the movement. And I was like, what the hell what are you talking about? But this was a cat that was a wazir inside the movement. And then he seriously advocated that we needed somebody to be a local imam, since Imam Yahya was the Amir of the overall movement. And I think that took credence among some enfranchised and disheartened people. Because I think some of them thought that they should have been. Because the history of Dar es-Salaam wasn't that Imam Yahya came up with the idea alone that we should have a movement. He was not the very first Imam of Dar es-Salaam, but he was the Imam that took Dar es-Salaam by Allah's mercy to heights that no other movement has ever achieved since then. Never achieved since then. One of the things that floored me when I met him, I grew up in Harlem. I was a Christian. And when I saw him talking Arabic, I'm like, what? And he was affluent with detail. And I'm like, man, this is all right. And he was rapping with Quran and Sunnah. And I'm like, man, he ain't going nowhere. And he used to always advocate and say, if you want scholars, be one. You don't have to go get one. Be one. And then he began to advocate. And he would say to us, y'all should know that this is a movement of leaders. He was trying to teach us and raise us up to be leaders of men and not just followers. And I believe that wholeheartedly because, by Allah's mercy, I think I have a brain. And so when things came my way, I was like, nope, not happening, not real. I have to look at this, I have to look at that. So in answer to your situation, or your question, Dar es-Salaam fell a prey to a lot of different things. Dar es-Salaam fell a prey to the hands of what we could say, if we want to be historically accurate without getting into our feelings, it was a military coup. Because Jelani was first introduced to the higher-ups inside the military. Now, inside of Dar es-Salaam, everybody knows they had a problem. But we had created a mid-level operation, which was called the Makbu, which was the military police who we had charged to scrutinize and deal with overall throughout the country. And then there was the level of the Army. These were the elite guys. These were the guys, I guess the best way I could say was like CIA or Dar es-Salaam or the FBI of Dar es-Salaam, because we were on and functioning at different levels that we got a lot of pushback from. And so when Jelani first came, he was introduced. We had gotten a phone call. I think all of us did. Hey, meet me out there in Jersey City, New Jersey. voice and lost. I'm like impressed with that. Okay. And so that was the first introduction. Now, in my estimation, 98% of the Imam took the blue pill. I didn't take any pill. I was stupid like that. I was like, nah, something ain't right with this. I already got an allegiance. I already got a leader. And I've had experience with other international people who had the adab that was necessary for them to have in terms of respect for who you were. And so when Jelani came, Jelani had a whole other thing because I think he was privy to some of the dissent that was existing inside the movement. And then I'll sum it up by saying, to show you how dirty and nasty that was, some of those people who had that dissent and made those moves were themselves discarded by Jelani's group later on when they died. That's a manifestation of hypocrisy. And so it was just that deep. It was a military coup from top to bottom. But that was the first ones that went lockstep. It went from the Imam, and took it from the Imam, it went right down to Rod. And then it had a dual activity. It went through Rod, and it went because the military was in control of what was known as Dagger Investigating Services. It was a security company that a brother owned, that he basically gave to the brothers. And it employed everybody on Rod. So now the cake has the batter that has been put together and shoved in the oven. And when the command was, hey, this is where we are, brothers went with it. Lost a lot of friends as a consequence of that. And I think a part of that, principally, in my estimation, was because though they had good hearts, they had empty heads. You understand what I'm saying? And so one lesson that I learned from Imam Yahya was on Eid. He gave a khutbah, and I'm going to end that this side. He gave a khutbah on one Eid, it was Fitrah. And he talked about Ibrahim alayhi salam, and how when he asked Allah to show him how resurrection would work, Allah said, Allah, do you not believe? Ibrahim said, yeah, but to satisfy my color, I'm trying to get my heart straight with this. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him to take 4 birds, remove the heads, cut the birds up, and mix the meat, the blood, the feathers, and take a portion and put it on different mountains. And he said, by the permission of Allah, call these birds. And he summoned them, they came running to him, y'all see this is in the Quran. And the birds came back with, the feathers and the blood and the meat. But they didn't have their heads because the heads was in the hands of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And these birds who had reassembled themselves, which was an example of resurrection, they were looking for their heads. They were in pursuance of their heads. And the right heads was looking for the right bodies. And Imam Yahya, in the conclusion of his khutbah, said, the example of this is that the wrong head on the right body will leave the right body astray. He severed the body from the heads, and he did a bunch of stuff, and he held them in his hand. And a lot of good people went on and went with it, and the wrong head from the right body led that right body. And as a result, God's plan was for about wait. So it wasn't an accident. Jelani came, he was escorted in. Was he an agent? I will go to my grave and I will stand on the Yama and say, yes. But I don't think he was just a federal agent. I think he was an international agent. Okay, I think he was an agent of the highest level because they couldn't figure out how to get to Dar es Salaam. Everybody they tried to get in, they couldn't get in. And so what they did was send somebody. And Allah told us this in the Quran, and Rasulullah said, hey, Shaitan know how to dress up. What do we learn from the Sunnah about Shaitan, who had an encounter with Abu Hurairah? And he went to Abu Hurairah and said, listen, if you give me that subject, I'll teach you something from the Quran. He said, really? Okay. And he told him, I have to curse him. After he ripped the subject. And when the information got back to Rasulullah said, do you know who that was? And he said, well, his message was best. He said, that was Shaitan. He came speaking your language, speaking your Quran, and standing in your direction. So don't think that your enemies are not going to come. If you have a blue uniform and they will come with an army, that only happens in basketball. When he comes, he's going to come whatever color your uniform is. That's what he's going to put on. And that's the proper way to say it. In front of you, in the back of you, to the left. And then Rasulullah didn't ask him who he said, just speak your language. They'll be on your stop. So the movement was hijacked and given away by probably good people, but ignorant. They had good hearts, but I think a lot of them had empty heads when it came to that, because a lot of them were not thinking independently for themselves. And if you remember from our history, that was one of the things that happened when you survived, emphasized more than anything else. I always said, you have to learn how to think for yourself, listen for yourself, and hear for yourself. So when you come to a conclusion, you will have a conclusion for yourself. People weren't doing that. People were not doing it. And so there were people who came in our midst who didn't come to lead our struggle, but to contain our struggle.